Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're unpacking a truly fascinating and honestly, a highly relatable clinical profile. We're going to look at the hidden psychology behind why some fully grown adults get stuck in these childish defense mechanisms. It's a phenomenon that psychology has studied pretty deeply, and it really highlights the stark difference between simply aging and actually maturing. Let's look at the mental roadblocks keeping people stuck and what it truly takes to cross the finish line into psychological adulthood. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever met someone who looks like a full-grown adult, but the second life gets tough, they suddenly behave entirely like a child? I mean, really think about that for a second. We all know someone like this, right? When things get difficult, instead of stepping up, they avoid responsibility, they point fingers, and they fully expect someone else to just swoop in and clean up their mess. The contrast here is pretty striking. On the outside, these folks project this complete illusion of adulthood. They might be a vice president of sales, they pay their mortgage, they check all the boxes of adult responsibilities. But emotionally, the reality is very, very different. When the pressure is on, their internal response is just pure avoidance. They're basically surviving behind a facade because internally, they never fully grew up. Now, psychology actually has a very specific term for this. It's called emotional immaturity. Basically, it's a state where a person just hasn't fully matured emotionally, which almost always leads to a pattern of avoiding responsibility to fiercely protect their own ego. This is our academic baseline right here. It's the real psychological root of what pop culture usually calls a man-child. It's not just some quirky personality trait, it's a profound developmental delay in how they process the entire world. Section 1. Escaping the consequences. Let's look at traits 1 and 2. The very first major sign of emotional immaturity is responsibility avoidance. Whenever humanly possible, they're going to dodge accountability. When a project fails or a relationship falters, it's literally never their fault. It's bad luck, it's an unreasonable boss, or it's their partner. It's what we call an external locus of control. Psychologically speaking, accepting responsibility forces a person to confront some really uncomfortable truths about their own shortcomings. So avoiding it acts as a shield for their fragile ego, which completely prevents any real personal growth. And this brilliantly illustrates our second trait, the profound disconnect between what they want and what they actively avoid. Kids naturally just want rewards. Adults, on the other hand, understand that actions have consequences. Well, the emotionally immature person wants the absolute best of both worlds, often living in this state of deep cognitive dissonance. They crave the independence, the choices, and the rewards of adulthood, but they actively flee from the accountability that comes with them. Simply put, they want the freedom, but they absolutely refuse to pay the bill. Section 2. The dependency trap. Moving on to traits 3, 4, and 5. Trait number 3 is a severe struggle with emotional regulation. When things don't go exactly their way, an emotionally immature person resorts to some surprisingly childish reactions. We're talking sudden anger, sulking, extreme defensiveness, or just complete withdrawal. True emotional maturity involves managing your emotions without letting them control your outward behavior. Emotionally immature folks are essentially passengers. Their immediate, unfiltered emotional reactions are the ones actually driving the car. Because they can't self-regulate or handle consequences, trait 4 kicks in, which is depending on others to solve their problems. Just look at how this cycle works. Step 1, they face an uncomfortable truth or a difficult task. Step 2, instead of developing any self-reliance, someone else, like a parent, a partner, or a friend, steps in and rescues them. Step 3, their avoidance is effectively rewarded. Over time, this cements into step 4. Dependency becomes a hardwired habit. They have successfully outsourced all of their emotional heavy lifting. Which leads us directly to trait 5, chasing immediate comfort over true growth. Look, true growth takes effort, discipline, and delayed gratification. By its very nature, it is uncomfortable. But emotionally immature people consistently choose the path of least resistance. If a task feels difficult, they avoid it. If it's boring, they quit. By constantly retreating to the couch of comfort, they stay permanently stuck in familiar patterns, basically watching from the sidelines as everyone else moves forward. Section 3. Protecting the ego. Let's look at trait 6. Now, this is perhaps the most defining symptom of all, how they process feedback. An emotionally mature person has the ability to separate feedback from their core identity, right? They can hear, hey, you did this poorly, without translating that into, I am a bad person. But the man-child simply cannot make that separation. To them, even the smallest, most constructive criticism feels like a devastating personal attack. So instead of listening and adapting, the walls immediately go up. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly in the psychological literature. It says, criticism feels like a personal attack when self-esteem depends on protecting the ego. Think about that. If your entire sense of self-worth is built on this fragile illusion that you're flawless and never responsible for mistakes, any piece of criticism threatens to totally shatter that reality. Because their self-esteem is so incredibly fragile, they defend it with absolute hostility. Section 4. The choice to grow. Time for the reality check. We've covered the mechanisms of avoidance, the dependency, the ego protection, and it all leads us to this ultimate reality check. Growing older happens automatically. Growing up does not. Being a man-child has absolutely nothing to do with chronological age. It's entirely about emotional development. The psychology here is crystal clear. True adulthood only really begins the exact moment a person stops avoiding responsibility and starts taking unvarnished ownership of their choices. I want to leave you with this final provocative question to reflect on. Look at all the hidden psychological patterns we've explored today. Understanding them is the absolute first step toward actual growth. So ask yourself, and maybe look closely at the people around you. Are you just aging, letting time pass and avoiding the hard work? Or are you truly actively growing up? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep growing.